So talking about utility damages, Connecticut has a very strong program. We have a very low damage rate. I'll show you some stats in a minute. Yet we still have damages. When I started back in 1998, we were at about 1,000 or 1,200 damages per year. And it was a lot. And we really did a lot of things. We started doing more education. 10 years ago, we really ramped up our enforcement program. And we've driven that number down. But yet we still have 500 damages a year. So we plateaued at the 500 number. So we are really looking for ways to really drive that number down, because a lot of these are still very preventable. And we are looking for every way we can to prevent damages. Now this is a chart. I took data from the past 2 years, looking at what is causing the damage. So every time there's a damage, utility companies are required to file a report with PURA, saying a root cause of what the damage happened. The leading one is basically, they say the excavator failed to use reasonable care, 300 damages. Other leading causes are failed to hand dig near gas lines and failed excavator to maintain marks, kind of the three pieces of the pie that are on the bottom there. That's what we're mainly looking at today, this is where we need excavators' help to not damage things when they are marked. The other large pieces of the pie, you see excavator failed to notify, call before you dig. We handle that through education. Most of the no-notice damages we get are people who have never damaged something before, so we provide them training so they understand the program. Then the top two corners, these two here, these are markout errors. Like you said, there are a lot of markout errors. And that piece we handle through enforcement. And you'll see later on, I think toward the end, Sean's presentation, the vast majority of our civil penalties are against utilities for markout errors. And markout errors we have kind of a zero tolerance on the enforcement side for. So that's something we're working very hard on, trying to get the marks correct. One of the things that the utilities report when they file the damage reports is the type of work that's being done when the damage happened. And this was enlightening to me because I see most of the damages occur doing utility type of work. Water work, natural gas work, and drainage work, and sewer work, and electric. So these are the types of jobs that are most at risk for having damages. By show of hands, how many are in that type of realm doing water, natural gas, drainage, and sewage work? All right, okay, a good half the room. Okay, good to know. Like I said, Connecticut, we have a very strong program. We like to compare state to state how people are doing. One way we do it is through PHMSA, which is a National Department of Transportation organization. Every utility, every gas company files an annual report, and they list out how many damages they had, number of tickets, and we look at damage per 1,000 locates. Nationally, all gas companies together are about 2.5 damages per 1,000 locates. Broken out just the eastern region, which is like mostly the New England states, is about 1.8 damages. Connecticut, we're at 1.2. So nationally, regionally, we are doing better than most, which I'm very proud of. But I still have 500 damages a year. Many are preventable. So that's why we're here today talking. Why is damage prevention so important, and why does Connecticut have such a strong program? This is one reason. The Rieben restaurant in Derby. Unfortunately, sometimes good legislation comes out of a tragedy. December 6th, 1985. There was an explosion, collapse, and fire of a 4-story building. The Rieben restaurant was on the ground floor of that building. There were 6 fatalities and 12 injuries. Fortunately, the incident happened in the afternoon before the dinner crowd was there. The cause of the explosion was a cracked 3-inch cast iron gas main adjacent to the property that was damaged by adjacent sewer construction. After this incident, the NTSB got involved. Connecticut developed a really strong enforcement program, and this has led to where we are today, unfortunately. Knock on wood, this is the last fatal incident we've had from a call before damage strike in Connecticut. I always think that still can happen. The risk is out there, but this is the last one that's happened. So why is damage prevention so important? Damage can be fatal. If you strike an electric line or a gas line, you, somebody on your crew, a member of the public could lose their life from an electrocution or an explosion. They can be very expensive. if your company's ever been involved in a large utility strike, there can be lawsuits, there can be litigation, there can be restitutions, there can be civil penalties. One utility company just had to pay out a $2 million settlement to for an individual who got electrocuted. He survived, but he was he was in a trench, he was a laborer, and they hit an unmarked electric line. And he came in contact with something, and he suffered some electrocution, survived, but he was permanently injured. So we don't want to be there. Damages can be very disruptive. Half of you have been on an incident or site where you've had a damage. Pretty much your job is at standstill for the day as the utility company shows up and everything has to happen. It can slow down your production. It can be very disruptive. Don't let this be your job site. You don't want to have this be your work site. Okay, next I want to turn it over to Steve. He's going to talk about kind of the process for starting a job. Just as a background, the way we set up today's presentations are kind of like step by step through the whole process. So Steve's going to start with like starting the job and then go through time-wise. So go ahead, Steve.
All right. So you've got a good background now on what Connecticut's Underground Utility Protection Program is all about. And my portion of the program is to discuss, well, it says arranging a job. But don't get me wrong, I'm not going to tell you where you should park your backhoe or put your backfill or anything else. What we're really talking about here is the steps you need to take before you put that shovel in the ground for the very first time. And as you can see from this slide, it gives you a little look inside of what we're going to talk about here. Things like those markouts you see on the right-hand side. Let's try this nifty little thing and see if this works. There we go. Hopefully you don't have to excavate in an area like this, guys, because I don't know how you would ever circumvent or navigate all of those underground facilities. You've also got an area of a pre-mark over here, which is going to be really the focus of what I want to talk about. And of course, there we are on a site that's already been flagged, and they're ready to go to work. So why do we pre-mark? Well, number one, it's in the Connecticut state statute. It tells you that before you begin and actually make that call, to call before you dig, you need to go to your job site and mark out the area that you're intending to excavate. Why? Well, number one, and most obvious, the locators do have to know where you're working so that they can give you and focus on the area you're most concerned with. I've already mentioned that it's in the state law, and just as a heads up, this is one of the areas that PURA is beginning to focus more attention on. You're probably well aware that you can be fined from PURA if, in fact, you violate any of the call before you dig laws. Well, this is one aspect of that law that has not been as enforced as it will be in the future. So if you're not in the habit of pre-marking your jobs, better start. And what you see here in the picture is simply a good example of a pre-marked job site. We know that you mark in white paint, and that is the indication for any utility locator to know that that is the area you're planning on digging in. And then you can see some associated utility markouts within the confines of that area. This here is something I hope you all recognize. This is the confirmation ticket that you will receive when you place a request for utility markouts with call before you dig. You know that whether you're contacting us through our 800 number or doing this locate request yourself online, that you're asked to draw a map of where you're going to be working. And you can see that that's been very nicely done on this example. One of the concerns we have is that not all utility locators receive this same map on the ticket they use in the field. Why is that? Well, it all has to do with the level of technology that each of our utility members has. As you can imagine, a company like Eversource, or one of the gas companies probably have a little bit more sophistication in the way they manage and can receive this data and then ship it out to the field for their locators. Some of the small water associations or municipalities may not have the technology available to them to actually get this same data out into the field. One of the key aspects of the drawing is that it helps call before you dig know just what utilities could be impacted by your work. So this map, when you draw it, really serves two functions. Number one, it helps us process your request by knowing the territory you're working in, and we, from our records, can tell what utility companies may have lines or cables beneath that work site. And then secondly, for those locators that do get this information, it reinforces the area that you're going to be digging in. Key to any of the communication that you do through your request are things like your remarks. And it's a very important relationship between the map you draw and the remarks that you go ahead and make on your ticket. These things go hand in hand. A good locate request requires both of those things to be filled out and done as specifically as you can. The map gets people to the right general area. The remarks on the ticket is what tells specifically what you're going to be doing and where you're going to be doing it at your job site. Well, I mentioned some people in the field don't get that map. This is just an example of the basic information that everybody receives, regardless of how sophisticated your receiving equipment is, no matter how you manipulate data in your office. This here shows at least the text message that every owner and operator of underground facilities receives. You can see that it has the remarks area, again, very important. There's also an area that asks if you have, in fact, marked out your locate request. The information that we ask for, as you know, concerns the street address. We ask for that, for an intersecting street, any other detailed information as to how locators can access your work site. And what I want to do is show you a few of the things that emphasize the need to truly mark in white paint your intended area of excavation. Here we've got a ticket excerpt that says this excavator is going to repair a water leak. No specific address, because they've got to look for that leak. And we know he's going to work on Acorn Street near Oak Street, and he's going to go down from the intersection some 200 feet. Now, if you're a utility locator and you come out with this information, first of all, you say, oh my God, look at the area he's got to cover. And he doesn't know whether you're going to be digging in the center of the street, if you're going to be digging on one of the curb lines, if in fact you need every single service marked out to each of the homes in this area. Leaves a lot of guesswork. Even if you mark out minimally, it's a help. And this demonstrates that if you put a few of the white call before you dig marks on the street, at least you're giving them some guidance. And I have to tell you that one of the most important things for pre-marking is that it allows a locator to see where you're working. He can focus his marks there. He can get that job done and move on to his next scheduled job. And that's important for all of us, because if we allow the locator to be more efficient in his work, he can get more jobs done per day. That means less downtime for you. It means markouts that'll be done on time when you expect them. This markout example is even better. We're still dealing with the same location, but at least here you see the white lines that really encircle the entire area that this excavator is interested in having marked out. The locator can see that it's work that may go as far as the curb line and up onto the sidewalk, Certainly, it includes the full intersection here of the two streets he's named on his ticket. And it gives him a much better idea of where it is he needs to mark out. And there you see it. That's really kind of the best for a long job site like this water leak repair. Here again is another pre-mark. You can see the white outlines of the job, the extent across the street, all the way down to this point. And one thing that we do like to see is here, the excavator has said, okay, this is my call before you dig job I'm marking out. Wouldn't it be better if you put an abbreviation for your company name? It would certainly tell people that this is your job so that it's not in fact confused with somebody else who might be working in the area. And we encourage you to do that. Use an abbreviation of your company name so that it's very clear as to who this job is being marked out for. Again, you can see the boundaries of where the excavator intends to work. And even more importantly, within that area, you can see the utility lines being marked, both as they enter into his work site and also coming out. And with the marks that should be made, and you see more farther down the street here, the excavator knows exactly where he's got to either not dig or at least be very careful. Here's a few other examples of pre-marking. This one is a catch basin repair, and you can very clearly see the white outline of where the excavator let people know he was concerned. And you can see all of the other utility marks around that catch basin. Another type of pre-marking, this one even tells us what they're going to be using at this site. You can see that the job is going to go 100 feet in what direction it's going in, and 20 feet to the side. Here's one where the white line is actually accomplished by putting in flags or stakes, which is entirely allowable. And you can see there's a white flag there, and then the white flags continue up the property and around to the rear. Very important to do that. If you can't actually see the full extent of the work when you are out in the road, make sure you're marking on private property or wherever it is that you're going to be installing in whatever that facility is or accomplishing whatever work it is you have to do. Here's an example of an offset. This person isn't actually working on the road, but as you can tell from the marks, he's actually working for a length of 300 feet parallel to the road, but 100 feet back. So he's back in this field someplace, and we would hope that based on this mark in the roadway, if you walked 100 feet back here, you'd see an additional stake or something to indicate where that work is going to begin, and then markings that go up that 300 feet paralleling the road. One more type of mark out. You can see where the job is beginning here. The indication is as to where that line may go up to the house. All of these are specific enough that when a locator gets there, he can see what it is you intend to do. He can focus his marks there, pack his gear up, and get on to the next job site. So what do we get out of pre-marking? Well, number one, it's a great way to describe your location. It really increases the communication with the locators. And how do you do that? Well, again, it's a combination of the picture you draw on your ticket, and very definitely it depends on the description that you put into the remarks of those tickets that you process. There's less confusion going on out at the job site. Then of course we're going to do what Dan said is the goal, which is avoid any damages to underground facilities. So, you go out and you pre-mark, and you've done a good job with your comments and so on. What happens next? Well, we have in that state law an action called positive response, and that requires the utility or any of the owners and operators of underground facilities to get back in touch with the excavator. How do they do that? It's really one of three ways. They either go out to the job site and they mark the facility's location, or they go out and they mark, as you see here, that there are none of their facilities in that particular spot. You might see no conflict, things of that nature written out there as well. The utilities can also contact you via phone or email to let you know the status of the job. And there's also a function that you can use through Call Before You Dig. And that is an electronic notification. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Maybe some of you are already using it. How many of you, just by a show of hands, are using the automated positive response Call Before You Dig? I see some hands. Great. Well, it's a tool that we continue to encourage more and more utilities to use, because what it does is it allows everyone to come and put data back in one central location, the Call Before You Dig Center. And what is this automated positive response? Well, as you can see here, when you go in and log in to your account at Call Before You Dig, which is this, and you go to your original web page site, you can log in, you can look at your history. When you click on history, there's an option to allow you to look at any tickets that you've placed in the Call Before You Dig system. You can search your tickets by the ticket number, by the town or city that you know the work was taking place in, by the date you placed the ticket. Any number of these search fields would allow you to bring up the ticket number you're interested in, and it will show you those tickets. And what I want to point out here is what's in green. What this indicates is that 2 utilities were notified of this work that you were doing, and 2 utilities have replied. You've received 2 messages back. And this is the idea, is that if all the utilities respond to your work site request, you can go one place and find out what they've done and what descriptions they've given you as to what to expect once you go back out to that job site. Here we've actually clicked on that ticket number. It brings up the individual data. And in this example, it'll show you that Eversource in particular responded, and their reply was that they don't have facilities that are in conflict at that job site. It's just a way of pooling all of the data that helps create a full picture of this job. And then it's there on file for you to use forever after. One of the features of the positive response system is once all the utilities do reply to your ticket, you do get an email message telling you that everyone has responded, and you can now look at that, find out what the details are, and proceed with your job. One last thing I'll just cover is the responsible party. And this is verbiage taken right out of the Connecticut state statute. Responsible party is the one who is in charge of the job site, who has specific knowledge about what's going on, what is being done, who it's being done for, and in short, is really in charge of that whole job. That's the person we're looking for to call and make the locate request at Call Before You Dig. There's always questions about if you're like a general contractor, do you have subs working under you? Can those companies work under your ticket? Well, in some cases, yes. One thing that we really ask you to do, if you're going to do this, is to make sure that you've got that other company name written on your ticket and hopefully provide some kind of contact information for them. I think the bottom line, though, is, and what we really want to encourage you to do, is if you are working a job site and it's your equipment that's there, whether you're a sub or not, if it's your people doing the work and if it's your guy in the backhoe, go ahead and make that call on your own. Don't depend on some other company or somebody else having made that call and gotten that markout. Again, this is a very cheap insurance policy, guys. It's a free call, the markout is free. Don't run the risk of not being covered. Make sure that if you're working that job and actually have somebody in the backhoe, have your own ticket number. It'll make things far easier in the long run. And it's also that responsible party's job to do the pre-mark and make sure that they've got the communication they need to proceed with that job safely.